Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today just going to start with a bit of an apology. Obviously there haven't been many videos on the channel over the last few days. You can probably hear it in my voice a little bit. I have had a cold which I just haven't been able to knock, and yesterday I literally had no voice at all, so physically I couldn't record a video for you guys, so I do apologise for that. But we will make up for it with plenty of content over the next few days, providing the voice stays with me. Starting today, we are talking about something a little bit different. International football. Haven't covered it yet this year, but I want to talk about England's 2-1 win over Italy in the opening game of the Euro 2024 qualifier. Because I thought it was an interesting game. I thought a game of two halves. I think in the first half, Gareth Southgate's men were by far the better team, but in the second half, Mancini made changes, and Italy were then the better team. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what went well for England in the first half, although why I still wasn't convinced by it, and then what went wrong for England in the second half, what Italy done well, etc, etc. So as I said there, we will start with England, and as we would expect, they wanted to play the ball out from the back, often splitting the centre-backs Maguire and Stones either side of Pickford, looking for Pickford to then play out from the back, and of course progress the ball forward. A lot of modern teams do it. England wanted to do the same. However, the Italians used a reasonable high press. I'm not going to call it the most intense high press in the world because that would be lying to you guys. However, they weren't playing deep on the edge of their box. They were looking to squeeze up the pitch. And what we saw from their striker and Barella was a 1-1 system, which kind of rotates depending on what side the ball is. One of them is going to pick up the centre-back, the other is going to pick up Declan Rice in midfield. So let's say the ball goes to Stones here. The striker is going to go out and press, and Barella is going to sit here on Declan Rice. And then the ball will go across to Maguire. Barella's now going to come out towards Maguire, and the striker is going to drop in on Rice again. So that's the aim, basically a 1-1 constant rotation to try and stop England progressing the ball into Declan Rice, with the idea from the Italians' point of view that this then stops England really progressing the ball forward. However, what they didn't seem to account for was the fact that Barella at times was a little bit slack in his press, but also that John Stones and Harry Maguire are both very comfortable stepping forward with the ball, which means that if Barella is going to be a little bit slack, then Maguire can carry the ball forward here. Now from here it felt like the Italians were trying to crowd England over to one side. Of course Barella would now come over, you've got Berardi on Shaw, you've got Jorginho on Bellingham, Di Lorenzo on Grealish. The idea from Italy is that they're really forcing the ball over one side of the pitch. However, something they just didn't do well enough was kind of commit the wingers to really pressing. At times Berardi was a little bit deep, not really going all the way on Shaw. Pellegrini on the other side was kind of getting there on Walker, but only just about, which gives England this little bit of time. And from here, if you give these England players time, we know there's a lot of quality, they are going to be able to progress the ball forward. And in particular, what we saw was progression out wide, with Shaw rolling balls into the feet of Grealish, and Kyle Walker rolling balls into the feet of Saka. Now, this is essentially England getting out of the press. It wasn't a great press, but England managed to play their way through it, which is a good sign. However, from here, the kind of principles of this team just aren't really good enough. Now, first of all, I want to cover why it isn't good enough, and then cover why, there were still some good things that we saw. So the issue we have here is Kyle Walker is rolling the ball into Bukayo Saka. Shaw is doing it to Grealish on this side. What can this player do with the ball from this situation? Well, basically they have two options. They can delay it and lay the ball backwards, either back to their fullback or an inside midfielder, or they can turn and kind of dribble inside and kind of turn in towards a crowd where there's a decent chance you get tackled. Bukayo Saka and Grealish are not used to receiving the ball at these angles. The reason for that is because England don't use an optimal modern day elite system. What the elite teams do, they move their fullbacks a little more central. Arteta is famous for doing this, that quote about how he wants Ben White to pass to Saka across the man. England don't do this at all. So at club level, Saka and Grealish always receive the ball across their body where they're now able to get their fullback and be attacking, carry the ball forward, and it makes them very good progressive wingers. However, with England playing such wide fullbacks, it just completely changes the angle of the pass. The pass isn't going across inside enough, it's just into their feet. So it makes it quite difficult for England to progress the ball from there. However, the good thing that England did have from this situation was the ability to kind of suck Italy over to one side of the pitch, if you like. They're really dragging them over like so, and then going out into the other side, and then looking to play through the middle of the pitch. And the reason for this is because England had more players. If Berardi is out wide here and Retegui isn't quite in position, the Italians have a midfield three. Now, of course, England were playing with a three as well, so it looked like a natural matchup. However, what we often saw was Bellingham and Calvin Phillips splitting wide, dragging Verratti and Jorginho, who were in a man-for-man press. This now opens up Harry Kane. And quite simply, when you've got passing centre-backs like Stones and Maguire, and Kane's dropping in, it's a recipe for success basically. especially when the Italian centre-backs are not being aggressive enough. They're far too passive, sitting off, not really dealing with the physicality of Kane. This is going to cause problems for the Italians. The other problem they had was that the physicality of the England midfield just overwhelmed them. Verratti, Barella, Jorginho, all very good technical footballers, but from an athletic and a physical point of view, they couldn't really compete, especially with Bellingham and Rice. They're just too physical, too strong for them in the middle of the park, and it allowed England to really dominate and overload this area. What this now means is that Kane's going to get the ball, and suddenly he's got runners. We know that Bellingham always wants to break forward into these areas, and I thought his ball carrying was excellent once again, but also you've got the two wingers as well, who have bags of 1 versus 1 ability, bags of 1 versus 1 quality, the ability to really beat a man and get into the final third. So England were kind of set up into a good position. The problem that England had from here, though, was that, again, their kind of shape is kind of touching on being a really good shape, but it's just certain principles which they miss, and this is the problem with Southgate's side. So typically what this shape, kind of what England have done so far, should allow England to build in what almost becomes a 2-3-5 like this. With, you've got your two centre-backs, you've got your full-backs either side of your holding midfielder, you've got your striker, and then you've got your kind of 2-3-8s and your two wingers. This should create a front five, which now means that you can attack in all the channels, overload the defence and cause a lot of problems. But England's shape doesn't quite do that. Calvin Phillips isn't going to get into these areas all the time, but also the full-backs are too wide, which means that when Italy win the ball back, they kind of have these spaces in the middle of the park from where they can now counter-attack. England are bordering on having a really good modern-day system, but it's just certain issues. The fullbacks are far too wide, which means the wingers don't get the ball in an optimal way, but also from a defensive point of view, transitions, there are dangers in that area, and also someone like Calvin Phillips in midfield just doesn't get forward enough. And what we didn't see enough in this game was England kind of setting up camp in the Italian half and really taking control. I thought in things like transitions or situations where England are playing through the thirds quickly, they looked really good, and the power of Rice, Bellingham, Phillips, and the quality of Kane dropping deep, I thought that really hurt Italy in the first half, and England did play well. However, we need to see more sustained, pin Italy back and then break them down. We didn't really see that, and England were deserving of their 2-0 lead. However, I still didn't think the system was great. So yeah, decent from England on the ball without being great. It's okay. It still needs to be better. But now let's take a look at the Italians.
So before we continue with the video, I want to talk to you guys about where I got this shirt from, and you probably guessed it, jerseyfifa.com. They have kindly sponsored today's video and also sent me a load of free shirts for me to check out myself, and I can now really vouch for the quality of these products. They have loads of shirts to offer on the website, so if you are interested, head to the link in the description down below and check out Jersey FIFA for yourself.
So like England, Italy of course want to play the ball up from the back. Again, it's what modern day teams do. And the press from England was okay, but flawed again. Again, they're kind of bordering on having good principles, but are not quite there, and it makes them easy to play through. I think they're only a few switches away from really making a good squad here, a good setup, a good system, but there's still flaws in it. So basically, England's plan was to force Italy one way. So Toloi might have the ball here, Kane's going to kind of curve his run into this area, prevent the ball going to Acerbi, and it's going to force Toloi into this area, from where England lock on man for man. Shaw was quite aggressive on Berardi, which we like to see. Grealish is up on Di Lorenzo, Bellingham is on Jorginho, and when Toloi isn't the best ball-playing defender in the world, this should give England potential to really squeeze high and win the ball back. However, England have a flaw in their system, because when most teams kind of move over and press one side of the pitch, most big teams these days then bring the opposite winger in to also come and press. They'll curve their run to try and take out the fullback and the centre-back. However, Southgate is a bit too passive to do this, a bit too defensive, a bit too cautious, so he leaves the winger on the other side quite deep, with Bukayo Saka in particular really playing quite deep at times from a defensive point of view. What this means though is that if Toloi steps forward, he can then just play across to Acerbi. So England have now kind of committed to squeezing over to one side of the pitch, following the Italians, but with Saka being too deep from, I'm assuming, what was instruction because it happened on both sides of the pitch, it means that the ball can go across in here, and Acerbi can now step forward, and England's press is broken. What we're going to see from here, though, is not only is their press broken, but their midfield is now given a big problem as well, because we now have a centre-back stepping forward with the ball, combined with Verratti, Jorginho, and Barella, all who are very, very technical, up against just the three England midfielders. And that's a problem, because it creates this momentary or this temporary 4 versus 3 in the middle of the park. And when teams do that, you're going to get hurt. And better teams might hurt you a bit more. More confident teams might hurt you a bit more. Now, this is something that we talk about with England a lot. Gareth Southgate will often use very athletic midfielders, but not always the most technically gifted ones. And the reason for this is because his system is flawed. Because he is a bit cautious, keeping that winger deep, his midfield have to cover so much ground. So it's actually Southgate's system which kind of makes this problem of needing to use athletic midfielders. Because say if you did put someone like Maddison in there, England are then going to get overrun. So this is a problem that Southgate which has created for himself. However, like I said, what this meant is that Italy could create overloads in the centre of the park. And there were situations where they could get at the back line. However, I thought that England defended well. And, you know, even on in the wide areas, Shaw had Berardi's number. Really, it was quite easy for him. Walker on this side was following Pellegrini. And Saka done a really good job of tracking Spinazzola all the way. So England could drop all the way into a back five. However, in the second half, Italy did improve. So in the second half, a couple of things happened for the Italians, and we're going to see how that played out. So one thing that they done was up the intensity. They were pressing much higher, pushing the wingers in particular much more aggressively, allowing them to win the ball back. So that was the first big change. What this then means is that they have more possession, which means that they can now try and build possession in a different way to which they did in the first half, and that is in more of a 3-2-5 shape. We've got the two centre-backs here, and Di Lorenzo playing reasonably deep initially in the second half. You then got Jorginho and Verratti in a double pivot, Pellegrini now coming really narrow, forming a box midfield, and then you've got your front three of Berardi, the striker, and Spinazzola. And again, this is a good system from the Italians. You've got this 3-2 shape, which is a good base to build possession, but also the box midfield. And again, what this is going to allow the Italians to do is outnumber the England midfield. This time, though, with pure midfielders. Rather than it being a centre-back making the overload, it's Pellegrini coming inside, and he's a really good player. He is a midfielder, so he naturally wants to come into these areas. And this meant that the Italians took control of the second half, really pushed forward. As a result, Spinazzola's getting higher and higher down the left-hand side, which kind of subsequently means that Saka is getting deeper and deeper on the right-hand side. And basically, second half, England are getting forced further and further back into their own half, but because the likes of Saka are deeper, Grealish is deeper, Kane is deeper, it then means England don't have the counter-attacking threat, which then means the Italians win the ball back quicker, and now you see the theme for the second half. It was the Italians really taking control of this game, really finding it quite easy. Now, of course, on top of this, we also had the fact that Luke Shaw was sent off, so Trippier came on at left wing-back. England are down to 10 men and now sitting really deep, in what is essentially almost like a 5-diamond. Kane's dropping really deep, England are essentially playing without a striker, the Italians are kind of building the pressure, moving further and further forward. Ultimately, England just defended their box really well. They just dealt with the situations very comfortably. Everything the Italians threw at them, England had the answer. You know, it wasn't good from England in the second half. You know, we didn't see anywhere near enough of them on the ball. I think that's a sentence. You know, England couldn't get the ball. They're forced deeper and deeper and deeper. They don't have the outlet. They don't have any speed on the pitch. Saka is being forced deeper and deeper on the right-hand side into a wing-back position. England were poor on the ball in the second half. However, they defended well enough. So they get the 2-1 win, a really important win. I think kind of the big difference in the game was the quality of someone like Harry Kane dropping into the midfield. I thought he was the big difference maker. However, there is a problem here for Southgate, because we see this far too much. We saw it 2018 World Cup in the semi-final, England take the lead early, sit off and don't play very well. We saw it against Italy in the Euro 2020 final, which was played in 2021. England start well, play well, get the lead, then drop off, lose all their quality on the ball, sit too deep. We saw it spells against France, although not so much at the World Cup. But it is a problem for England. It's a recurring theme that when England take the lead against big teams in big games, they just sit far too deep. And it's a problem that Southgate's got. Because, yes, there are some good defensive players here for England. You know, if we go to that 11, there are good players there. But what you've got to remember is that none of these players play in low blocks for their clubs. Like, who there regularly plays in a low block? Declan Rice, maybe sometimes Harry Kane, Trippier. Apart from that, though, these are not players which are used to sitting deep and defending their own penalty area. They want to press high. So Southgate still isn't playing to the strengths of these players. There's still problems in possession, there's problems out of possession. However, having said all that, I thought the mentality of the squad was very good. The first half performance looked dangerous. Bellingham was quality, so was Harry Kane, so was Declan Rice. So, you know, credit where it's due. England won 2-1. They were deserving of their win, and it's a big win for qualification. So we'll just have to see how the rest of the group goes. I will cover the Ukraine game at the weekend. But that's all I've got to say for this particular video. England were a better team, deserved their win. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I will see you in the next one.